Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Thanks, Gertrude. My name's Renée Giarrusso. I'm based in Melbourne and I'm the CEO and founder of RG Dynamics and Limitless Leaders. When I think about my story and where everything sort of started for me was back in 1997, so a few decades back. And I was going for my first real corporate role as a grad with Mars Australia New Zealand. And it had been quite a rigorous process to get the role, a lot of assessments, a lot of psychometric tests, a lot of interviews. And it was, I think it was July 1997. And I saw my father and my mum and dad, they split up when I was quite young. They stayed amicable. And I was always really, really close to my mum and my dad. My dad was an entrepreneur in the 70s, before the word entrepreneur was even a word. And he was in the rag trade and he had advertising agencies, and an amazing man and inspiration to me, along with my mother. He said to me, "We do our dinner every Tuesday night. I don't want to see you until you get that job at Mars." And a few weeks passed, and it was the night before I was going for the last assessment centre. And I'm quite an intuitive person, and I had a feeling something had happened to someone. I got home and my mum said, "Your dad's in the hospital." And in streams of tears, and it's really a bit of a blur now, my husband now, who was my boyfriend at the time, we headed to the Monash Medical Centre in Melbourne, and my father had actually passed away. He'd had a sudden heart attack at 50 years old, which is my age now. I got home and in a blur of tears and confusion and overwhelm, I said to my mum, "I'm still going to go for that assessment centre tomorrow." She's like, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." Got my little suit out, because back in the 90s we wore suits, even though they're coming back in fashion now. And I went to the assessment centre the next day in the city, and I do have to say it was probably the hardest thing I've ever done. I'm a person that can put things aside. I've been through a lot and really just soldier on and get through. I didn't tell anybody that my father had passed away. Some might call me ruthless. A few people did. Got through the day and I ended up getting the job where I spent 12 years in the corporate world. Around that time, when that all happened, I'd always been quite an outgoing person, but it was like a light switched on in me that how can I live my life to the fullest and do the things that maybe my dad didn't get to do? And I came up with a concept called the gift mindset, which is the name of my latest book. So I had 12 years in this corporate role with a great company, and I was always looking outside the box, very right brain, very creative, very high initiative, wanting to do different things. And I ended up leaving in 2006 to start my business that I have today, which is RG Dynamics, where we work with leaders and teams across mid-tier corporate and small business. around communication, mindset, and leadership. But that mindset has stayed with me, and through thick and thin, it's always been a part of me. And in 2021, I penned all my ideas, all my thoughts, all my experiences, and I wrote The Gift Mindset, which has just gone into 3 countries overseas and has won a few awards and is helping so many people. The gift mindset has helped me get through a lot. In COVID, like many of us, being in Melbourne, we had 4 really big lockdowns. I lost my whole business. My little sister got diagnosed with breast cancer 2 weeks before COVID. So it was a tough time rebuilding the business, trying to support her without being able to see her. She had to go to chemo on her own. She's come out the other side. She's still not well. But the gift mindset was pivotal in me getting through and rebuilding my business back to what it is today. So you're probably thinking, what is this gift mindset? I'm a big believer that if we stand back and look at experiences or people that are difficult, or experiences or people that are positive, we can always unwrap the lessons that we've learned. Too often they get swept under the rug. You know, in corporates, we don't share failures. We might not share wins because we feel like we're gloating. So my mission is to help people really turn an event into an experience that they can use to progress themselves and others forward. And I think that's something we need more than ever. It's a well-being mindset. If we can embrace or welcome the unwelcome, as Pedro Chodron, one of my favorite books, writes, things are coming at us anyway. It's how we deal with that and how we can, I believe every negative has 3 or 4 positives. Sometimes hard to see when we're in the middle of something, and, you know, I resonate with that. But being able to step out of something and go, I got through that. What did I learn that I can use to move forward and help other people progress forward? So an example of that and how I live my life, you know, I think the key, there's 12 sort of key skills we learn when we embrace this mindset. And the ones that I've really embraced the last few years are connection, you know, really learning more about myself and others and the community. Gratitude, you know, those that you would know that gratitude underlies resilience. The minute we feel we can't get through something, if we bring some optimism in and look at what we do have opposed to what we don't have, we can be in gratitude and get through things. Another one that really stood out for me was what we call the gift of curiosity. Curiosity to me is childlike wonder. And I think we all have it within us, but it can get stifled as we get a bit more mature and we're running on what I call the treadmill of life, and we become human doings opposed to human beings. So being curious is really about anything you're curious about that keeps coming up for you, you know, really observe that and provocate and look at different, you know, new learnings and possibilities. Curiosity in life and in business is so imperative, and it helps us not be better than other people. It helps us to be ourselves, and it helps us to be different, which I think, you know, leads the way opposed to being better than something else. So, yeah, the gift mindset's been a big part of my life. I've always been healthy growing up, turned 50, and I remember at my 50th, a lot of my friends hid under a rock when they turned 50. I celebrated because how blessed am I to be here? And I did say in my speech, and, you know, I'm so well and everything. And the last year I've had quite a few ailments that have come out of nowhere. And that's a learning journey for me now, is to, you know, I'm a goer. I'm always doing things like many of you listening or watching this. But to take that step back and really tap into what I call the 5 energies of a limitless leader, which is all of us. We're all leaders of our life. So I always think about, you know, physical energy gets talked about a lot. That's how we function, so keeping fit. Spiritual energy is different for everybody. For me, it's about forgiveness, knowing my values, and honoring my higher self. There's also emotional energy, and that's all about, how we feel, our mindset, knowing who and what triggers us. And that's really helped me deal with such a diverse array of clients and industries that I work with, being really in tune with that. And then we've got, and I've just blanked out, emotional, which is really knowing our trigger points and honoring those. So I always say, do what lights you up. I think a lot of people do what they're good at, not what they're good at that they enjoy. So know what and who lights you up and bring that in. And I always say, eliminate the energy vampires. Could be people, could be situations, could be tasks, but know what they are. And the other part of energy of all of us is our social energy. And that's really being connected to yourself and to others. And sometimes I know at the moment I feel my social energy, so interacting with clients, suppliers, and friends, is overstimulated. So I need to bring that back a bit. And also knowing your what your boundaries are there, what's okay and what's not okay. I think for anyone listening to this, whether you're in your own business or not, we're all leaders of our life. So we're all leaders of self. And I've always had a big word in life, and I encourage everyone to do that. My big word is limitless. And people go, but what does that mean? For me, it means learning, unlearning, relearning, and evolving. So always question the way you do things. Why do you do things a certain way? Is it the right way? Are there other ways? And that way we're continually learning and evolving. I'm an avid reader, so I read 50 books a year. So my clients don't have to, as I say. But a book a week, late at night, a lot of business books, but I also read a lot of other types of books as well. But it's a really good thing with books is to read through a book, but as you're reading it, tab the pages red, especially in a business book, with things you might not agree with or you might be questioning, and tab the other pages green for the things that you think will serve you. And it's a really good way to create your thought leadership and your opinions on things. And if anyone's listening to this that writes content, it's a really good way to bring different thinking in. So just a suggestion. I also like doing things that have no purpose. And a mentor asked me this years ago, I said, well, why would I do anything that has no purpose? And he said, because it helps you to be. So it could be watching Netflix. It could be reading a trashy mag. Just something that doesn't always have to tick off a box, doesn't have to, close off that productivity list. So that's something, I'm not great at and I'm working on. Know your passions. I think we all have passions in and out of work, and lucky for me, a lot of my passions overlap. But one of my passions is cooking. I love cooking. I learned to cook Sri Lankan at a young age. A friend's mum had a restaurant. So cooking is where I go without recipes, where I go and cook free flow when I just feel like creating and just being, and it really helps get me in the moment. So much so I've got a little cooking channel on Insta now just to get recipes written because people ask for them and I don't have them. So my story is, I've grown up in Melbourne, Italian mum, Australian dad, amazing stepdad, awesome brother, awesome sister, close family, really close family. And I think the more mature you get, the more the little things matter and the deeper your connections get with certain people. I always say review and renew relationships. Sometimes relationships don't serve us anymore for whatever reason. Sort of call it the unspoken breakup. But make sure that you're around people that support you, who's in your pit crew. And that's been really integral in part of my journey. I tend to be a giver and not ask for help. And it's something I've had to learn. People love to help. So it's a great idea to think about your 5 and then your 15 people around you the most. How are you supporting them? And how are they supporting you? Because it needs to be mutual. And mix up the people around you. You know, I say you want butt kickers, you want the Zen friend or the Zen person, you can do no wrong. The cheerleader, the person that's quite critical about you to keep you grounded. So I think, yeah, life's a big journey. It's an amazing journey. Just be open that it's always changing, and bring along those gifts, whether they're people or whether they're practical lessons that you can bring into your work and your life and make the world a better place. I'm on this earth to help people realize and achieve what's possible. That's my mission. Yeah.
Wow, Renee, what a fascinating story. And, the biggest reminder that you've just given us there is that the only constant in life is change.
Yeah,
Nothing
that's right.
stays the same.
No, and it never will, and it shouldn't.
No. So, talking about change, can you share what inspired the shift for you to go from the successful corporate career to founding RG Dynamics, and how your corporate experience has shaped your approach to coaching and leadership development?
Great question. Great question. Yeah, look, I absolutely loved where I worked. I had a role that I created in the middle of my career, which was new business channels. So I just loved it, marketing, sales. But I started actually running quite a few of the trainings in Mars, for Mars in-house. And I just loved it. And I got amazing feedback, and I just knew I had a gift in that. And growing up, I wanted to be a teacher, a journalist, and a performer. So it's sort of, now look at it, it all came together. It was hard to leave, but when I left, the main reason was I wanted to grow people because they wanted to grow, not just because I was their manager. That was a big part of it for me. And, all I could not be doing, and I really reinforce this, I could not be doing what I'm doing to the level I'm doing it if I hadn't had that background. Where I worked, they looked after you, but you worked hard. And it taught me a really high work ethic, to complete things, to think outside the box. All of those things have really, really helped me in my career. Funnily enough, I didn't do a lot with food and beverage when I went out. I actually did job search for 2 years, Gertrude. So
Hey.
totally left of field. So I presented at something, and this lady from the government said, "Would you like to do some job search training?" I said, "What?" She said, "You'd be really good. It's about making them get work." So I read the program, and it was okay. So I totally changed it, and I made it about what would it be to thrive, not just survive. And for 2 years, I worked with 35 people in a room, sometimes 3 generations from one family, up north, no air conditioning. And we got a really high rate of people into roles. And that built me as a facilitator and trainer, because there was no ego, right? And it was so rewarding. On the last, and then I went into sales training, and then really narrowed into leadership, mindset, and communication. But on the last training I did, some of these people I was doing job search with didn't have a home. Okay, just to give you the context.
Context,
This
yeah.
lady came up to me with this little shoebox. First I was like, oh God, what's in it? Then I opened it. I still have it to this day. And it had 20 little tissue wrapped packages with stickers on them. And it had, because my favorite movie is Wizard of Oz, and they knew that, 2 little red slippers, there's no place like home, a Barocca, don't ever lose your energy, little miniature pencils, stay colourful. And the card said, and I still have this card, it said, if it wasn't for you being here this week, I wasn't going to be here.
Oh, wow.
And that for me Yeah, I get goosebumps when I actually stop and think about that. And that's when I went, one person can make such a ripple. And I
Yeah.
want to keep doing that and create lots of ripples. Yeah.
And the impact of your work, just to get that immediate feedback must have been incredible. It makes
It
you
was.
realize that small thing counts.
It does. And that we all have the resources we need within us. The fact that this
Mm.
lady lived in her car, but went and bought, I don't know when she did it, all these different things and tissue wrapped them. And I just thought, kindness and generosity and appreciation doesn't have to cost anything. And I think it's missing in the world today.
Yeah.
I think we need
Yeah.
more of it. Yeah.
So in your work, you often talk about limitless leadership. Can you explain what this concept entails and how it differs from the traditional leadership models?
Yeah. Limitless leadership is all about leading self, leading decisions, and leading others, whether you're in a leadership role or not. I go into
Mhm.
some companies and some of the people in there are probably have more leadership traits than some of the leaders, right? So
Yeah.
we're all limitless leaders, and it's just continually learning, unlearning, and evolving. There's no ceiling. And I always talk about the 3 C's, limitless leaders. We need to connect, we need to commit, and we need to communicate. And I think,
Yes.
the beautiful intersection of that Venn model is motivation, performance, and fulfillment. And at the end of the day, one thing we all have in common as a motivator is progress, at different levels. Yeah, yeah,
Yes. So how do
yeah.
you
So
approach the challenge of transforming organizational culture? And what are some key strategies that you employ to foster a collaborative and connected team environment?
beautiful. So any work that we do, we really scope it out. We're not cookie cutter. So obviously I write all my IP and models, and I write all my diagnostics. So it's relevant, it's fresh, it's always evolving. But, we don't sort of come in and go one size fits all. So we'll work out what you need and then work with you on the program. So we're sort of co-building it, which I think, as you know this, when you get buy-in,
Mm.
people buy into things more when they're involved. So we run
Yes.
a lot of, Gertrude, a lot of pathways. We're not so much sugar hits. They don't do a lot. We tend to be quite immersed and deep in what we do. And we have face
Mhm.
to face where we can, virtual coaching masterminds. We've got a game. So we bring a really interactive, fun element to it. With strategies to get people connected, and this has sort of been my work, especially the last 6 years with COVID and everything. To me, it's about going back to human skills.
Mm.
AI, everything has a place. But I think one-on-ones, I'm so passionate about. Everyone should be having one-on-ones, not just with your manager, but with your peers. I encourage
Yes.
people to do stay interviews, which is a bit different. So we've all
Mhm.
heard of interviews, too late. A stay interview is just a check-in, maybe quarterly. So Gertrude, what's keeping you here? Why are
Mhm.
you staying here? What's stretching you? What do you want? And we had a client recently ring me and say, Renee, I did those stay interviews with 20 of my team, but I didn't worry about doing the high performance. And I said, why? Well, they're high performers. I said, have the same interview with them. 3 of the high performers were about to leave because they didn't
Oh,
feel nice. And that actually saved them. They stayed. So
okay.
be human. If you're all in the office on the same, when you go in the office, a lot of people go in on different days,
Mhm.
Zoom
Yes.
into a meeting room and they're in the office where the meeting room is. Have an overlap day, I call it, and just have some open forums. So I love Win Wednesdays. So what's something good that's happened, big or small, but how did you make that happen? And Failure Fridays where you share mistakes or just something that might not have gone to plan, but how you progress through that. And that's all part of what I call a gift mindset culture. So you've got all these forums and this safe space that people can share. And I think, companies that let people take risks and own them and help them move beyond that, really help them move beyond that, there'll be so much more innovation and creativity and happiness and collaboration. Yeah.
That's where the innovation comes from.
It
So
does.
your award-winning book, The Gift Mindset, has been influential. Can you elaborate on what the gift mindset is and how it's a game changer for leaders and their teams? I know this had to be the inspiration of the passing of your father. Go into
Yeah.
that a little bit for us.
Yeah, I think just knowing that I got through so many pretty tough, really, really tough things, I know it works. So I used to say it was a concept, but now I'm like, no, it's actually a mindset because I live it. But it's simply being able to, we use an acronym GIFT, so GIFT, and it sort of helps you break it down. But it's what happened, what did I learn, what key skills did I learn, how can I use them moving forward, and who else could I share my story with that this story or lesson or gift could help them. Sometimes our gifts are hidden, we don't know they're there, or we just move on, and I'm guilty of that. We move on and we just keep going and we don't stop and go, what did I learn out of that? Gertrude, I did 6 years of IVF and I'm an eternal optimist. And of course, the first few rounds worked. So I was like, what's all the fuss about? Then they didn't, and not successful in the end. And I didn't tell a lot of people. And my little niece, I write about her in the book. She's 21 now. She was 16 at the time, and she's quite intuitive. And she knew, and she goes, Auntie Nay, I just don't think you will get pregnant. And I was like, oh. And she said, your purpose in this life, you've got too much you're doing now to have room for that. That's not for you in this life. And it taught me the gift of acceptance. Wow. It was profound. We were crossing a road and it was like slow motion. When you have those sort of epiphanies, and I don't think she realizes how much that made me go, just wasn't meant to happen. I think everything happens for a lesson, not a reason. And I really think it was just too much. And, my sister got sick. I wouldn't have been able to, right? And then COVID. So I have some beautiful nieces and nephews and godchildren that I love like they're my own. And, that's how it is. Yeah.
That. Wow. So looking back at your own leadership journey, what were some pivotal moments or challenges that significantly influenced your leadership style and philosophy?
Yeah, so I always say you have the good leader, the good manager, and then you have what I call the Kris Kringle manager. So the Kris Kringle manager in the mindset is the manager you ask for perfume and socks, right? And I was lucky enough, I had a lot of really I had a lot of really good leaders that I went, I'll bring that in. But I did have a horrific Kris Kringle at one point. And if you're listening out there and you haven't had one, you will. But I remember getting a journal and writing down everything this person did. And I went, I'm going to do the exact opposite of that. So your challenges in leadership, I believe, will make you stronger. And I'm a real believer in don't ever write anybody off, because if you do and they leave or you leave, you'll only go somewhere else and find them somewhere else, the same sort of person. So just have the open conversations and know what drives each other at work. That's the first question I ask people, even my clients. What lights you up? I love getting stuff done. I hate detail. So I know straight away, I'm not a detail person, but I know I don't have to go into detail with them. So communication is the crux of everything. I don't believe in personality clashes. I believe in communication breakdowns. Yeah.
Okay. I like that philosophy. That is very, very unusual. So, having worked across 24 industries, what are some universal leadership challenges you've observed, and how do you tailor your coaching to address the industry specific needs?
Yeah. The first thing to the first part of your question is there's a lot of commonalities. I never
Okay.
thought working across cosmetics, food, data, alcohol, building, construction, engineers, I never thought there'd be a lot of commonalities, but people are people. Someone said to me the
Yes.
other day, so who's your ideal client? And I said, a human that has a growth mindset.
Mhm.
And but there
I
are
love.
so some of the typical ones I see are people that are brilliant, technically brilliant at their job,
Yes.
and they get 30 people to manage, and their leader rings me and goes, how come they were the best, now they can't manage anyone? It's a totally different thing, and people have got to want to do it. Unfortunately, in Australia, there's societal norms around you have to work your way up and manage teams to get promoted. It's a bit of an old adage in
Mhm.
Melbourne, and in Australia. And I always say to people, I've coached some people and they've gone, you know what, Renee, I've realised people management's not for me, and I'm good with that.
Yeah.
So set your boundaries. I always, some of the others are the leader that's very micromanaging, not trusting. It's sort of
Mhm.
the sales manager that still wants to sell. I think
Yes.
if you're out there and you've got a team, empower them, get them to peer coach so they all rise together. I'm a
Yeah.
big believer in finding out the 3 things each person in your team loves to do, and
Mhm.
make sure everyone knows what they are. If you don't like reporting, give it to Mary, but help her with it instead of delegating it to someone that doesn't like,
Yeah.
detail. So leveraging our strengths and appreciating our diversity of, when I hear diversity, I just think of diversity of experience, cognitive
Yeah.
diversity, the way we think, and those sorts of things. So I think the other one is if you get promoted, you're in a team and everyone goes for the management role and you get it, then you're managing
Yes.
your friend. I did 2 sessions on that today. So that's all about really, I always say, get the team together and say, we're all mates, we're all friends. I want to help us get even more value that we didn't get before. What do we need? And really having that camaraderie, but also separating your identity a little bit, which can be tough. I've been there. It's hard.
Yeah.
Um,
So true.
but anything that's hard, I usually go, it's unfamiliar. Anything hard you usually haven't done before, it's just
Yeah.
unfamiliar. So have that
No.
mindset of learning and provocating. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just all about mindset. You're right. When you reframe things that way, it's just a shift in thinking on whatever it is you're perceiving. So, with over 3,000 coaching hours,
Mm.
what are some of the most profound transformations that you've witnessed in leaders or teams that you've coached?
Yeah, there's been so Gertrude, there's been, how long have we got now? there's been so many.
Yeah.
One of the ones that stands out for me, which was earlier on in my career,
Mm.
was someone. So it was an executive guy in Melbourne. He was in a steel company and
Mm-hmm.
quite senior. And he said to me, I want you to coach me on what sport to play. And I went, and just keep in mind, I'd only been in my business 2 years, and I was like, he's paying me. What sport? Now, old me would have gone, well, what sports do you like? But I knew it's like, in Shrek, you got to peel the layers off the onion.
Yes.
So I kept at him for an hour and a half. It seriously felt like 20 hours. I had my little headset on. I still remember it. It was a hot night. I was like at my home office. And I kept saying, why is that a challenge for you? And he started getting quite And he's like, what do you mean? And I go, knowing you don't know what sport you want to play. He goes, well, I don't know if I like my job. And anyway, after an hour, I don't even know if I want to be married. I don't even know if I want this. And then he hung up on me. And I was like, oh, my gosh. Anyway, I rang my coaching mentor at the time, and she just starts clapping, and I'm in tears. And I'm like, what did I do? And she goes, that's a breakthrough, Renee. It's not about you.
Okay.
A good coaching session, shouldn't walk away always with a skipping rope and, kittens and rainbows. You've cut straight through. Cut a long story short, 2 weeks till he rang me, and I was just like, I had one of those Blackberries back then. Remember those? And I was like, hi. And he's like, I want to say thank you. I've left that business. I'm going to Dubai. I'm starting a business. I'm leaving my wife. And it was just like this shift, this absolute. So what I learned from that is don't ever buy into what people just say to your face, explore it.
Layers.
Listen to what's not being said. Look at the body language, the eye contact, all of those things. Because if you just buy into something, that's what they expect, because a lot of people are lazy and don't think deeply. So I think that's really, really important. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So my last 2 questions are going to be experimental.
Okay, love that.
I'm going to transport you into your past. And you are going to go and meet that young woman who set out in the world of business, naive and green and not knowing what was out there. If you could go back and give yourself 3 nuggets of wisdom based on what life has taught you up until this point, what would you say to her?
Ask for help is the first one.
Yes.
I've always,
that's a
big one. Very common, I think, too. I'm always helping and giving, and I think I could have fast-tracked a lot of things and time. So that would be the first one. Be more open to ask for help. I am getting better at it, not always having to be the helper. I think I did trust myself, but I look back now and go, back yourself even more, I think, you get a lot of people when you leave the corporate world. What are you doing? Even my mum, what are you doing? Your dad had businesses, but I think stay true in your conviction and your beliefs. And one thing I will say, I've had a lot of fun, and I have a lot of fun in and out of work, but if it was my younger self, I'd say slow down a bit in your 30s and enjoy it more, because I was just on this trajectory of run. Yeah.
Go down and smell the roses. So now let's teleport you into the future. You are now 90 years old. And you are sitting in your rocking chair, surrounded by your family, your little cat who's making some sound in the background there. If you could teleport into the future and have a conversation with a 90-year-old you, based on how you're living your life right now, what would you say to this wise woman who's led you to that point?
I would say, I hope you did a nice holiday every few years and had some time out. I hope you made more time for you. And I know that sounds all selfish, but I make a lot of time for a lot of people. And these are the things I'm working on. And hopefully I'll say to myself, you're healthy and you're 90 and you're going to live for another 20 years.
Oh, I love it. And with science being what it is, I think you would. And I like to ask women that question, because sometimes we forget that the wise woman is already in us.
Yeah.
She's already guiding us and leading us, and we need to trust that inner voice and that intuition you talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Trusting yourself is so important as a woman. Renee, thank you so much for coming online and gracing us with your presence today, sharing your wisdom with us. This has been a fascinating interview. Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Gertrude, and keep spreading your amazing magic around the world as you are.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. The Her Story Circle is bringing some phenomenal women to this platform, sharing their knowledge, their wisdom, their inspiration on a daily basis. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing woman. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And bye for now. Thanks again, Renee.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her story.